Ladies and gentlemen, it's now come to the part of the evening where I need to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank every single one of you for turning up tonight to support my charity. So thank you very much. I want to thank the Hope Family Centre, which is the charity and the building that we're into now, for providing the venue. So thank you very much for the Hope Charity Centre, which I am a great supporter. So Sheena, come forward. The Mayoress of Bromyard. Right? And she can take some credit. Now, what we have to do now is start going... Oh, whoa, whoa. There's one gentleman here. Mr. Daniel Pierce Higgins. Judge Daniel Pierce Higgins and his dear wife, the Deputy Mayor of Bromyard, has saved the day.
Come forward, come forward.
And this man is a wine connoisseur. So when I said, Daniel, can you find me some cheap wine? His reply was, Nigel, I don't do cheap. So we have to thank this man and Jan, his wife, who is the deputy that helps me out almost every time.
And when we have, when Jan is mayor next year,
yeah,
and we have we'll have to have another one like this.
We will.
Yeah.
We would like to invite you all to come along.
Don't push them.
No. One person that we have to sort of thank for this, Mr. Barrie Williams. He's the guy. In a minute, he's taking over this event. I'm taking this chain off. I'm sitting down, having a drink, down to that man. Yeah, you can. If you want to, you can. So I want to thank Barrie. What I want to do also is thank Kathy, his partner, and I have a special thank you to Mrs. Williams, because she was the one that sort of almost got this thing going. And what we have is a little thank you there. And from this point on, it is your night. So you're going to stand up. We have to leave here at midnight. There you go. It's over to you, Mr. Barrie Williams.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Mayoress, and family. We've met them all already. Ladies and gentlemen, and Jeremy Holden. I'm sorry about his hairstyle, but it's one of those things. No, but ladies, really fantastic. You lot won't believe what an honour this is, because I'm only a Bromyard boy, and I've just had a few good breaks and down the line all the time. But I've just been talking about days, motorsport and Bromyard. Bromyard has got a huge motorsport heritage, really, which we mustn't forget. And it goes back, my father used to race motorcycles. He raced in the Isle of Man, he did everything. And then he started Bromyard Engineering Mother started Bromyard Engineering. She was the one. She was the only one who knew what 2 and 2 added up to 4. To me, it was 5. They sent me off to Hereford Cathedral School, where I failed every exam. I wasn't an academic. I failed everything there. I wasn't even any good at sports, but I knew everybody. And then they sent me off up to Huddersfield, where I became a David Brown apprentice at David Brown Tractors, where I learned all about sex and drinking and all, and the general way of life, which is pretty much the same as Bromyard, actually. Don't worry about it.
Barrie Williams is well up with the leaders.
But, you know, that's Bromyard blood, and they're still at it. But in the old days, there was John Bayliss. John Bayliss, the butcher. He didn't just, get cheap meat out everywhere. But John was a very good driver, but he never got any further. There was the post office driver, the postman. He was very, very good, but they never got any further than driving the post van. John was very good. He had an A40 Devon. John Smith from Upper Sapie. He was a very good driver. He had an A43 and a rushed around, but farming and business and family, he decided to go that direction. So It's all there somewhere around. I went up Chelsea Walsh and I said to the commentator, he says, how are you getting on, Barry? I said, great. I said, I hope there's some people from Bromyard here, because I said, you know, I'm giving it all anyway. The gearbox went halfway up on my second run and it spun, but I didn't do anything, but they said, well held. But anyway, I got to the back and that was it. I drove someone else's Cooper Bristol that day. But I went to Chelsea Walsh when I was a kid, which was really the start of motorsport for me. And there was a chap called Dick Cooper from the hairdressers in Bromyard. Some of you won't remember Dick's grandfather used to hit you on the head with a brush when he gave you a haircut. And I always remember it well. But Dick Cooper and Reg Walker took me in a Morris Minor to Chelsea Walsh, and we watched Raymond Mays go up the hill. It was fantastic. We got back in this Morris Minor and we set off back to Bromyard, and it wouldn't go up Steam's Hill in top gear, in first gear. So we had to turn around, get out, and he had to reverse it up, and we walked alongside it. That was the difference of Raymond Mays and an ERA and us in a Morris Minor. But it always stuck in my mind, that, and that was, you know, the smell of Castrol R and all that sort of feeling was tremendous. You know, some of us still got that in our noses, and Jeremy does. And
Now it's Spice dicing with Jerry Marshall and Barrie Williams.
As I said, motorsport has taken me to most extraordinary places. I now am lucky. People ask me to drive some wonderful cars, terribly, terribly rare stuff. And all sorts of, it may be Chelsea Walsh, Prescott, hill climbs, Cop Hill, whatever, or at all the race circuits all over Europe, South America, South Africa, everywhere. I've driven some fantastic motor cars for some amazing people. I've mixed with a tremendous, it sounds like I, but I really have, and I've mixed with a lot of people who are predominantly very motorsport minded, like Status Quo, Rick Parfitt, and all those guys, JK, Nick Mason, all these people. Like I remember I was demonstrating a Ferrari F40 around Silverstone one day, and I was taking people for rides in it, and it belonged to Neil Corner, this car. And I remember coming through Woodcote Corner, which was a notoriously fast bend in the old days, at about 45 degrees, at about 130 miles an hour, with this little fella sitting in the passenger seat. He says, oh, he says, will you slow down a bit, please, boy? And I said, what's the trouble? He says, do you realise this car's worth more than my village? Everybody says, what's the best car? Oh, goodness knows. It's got to be British, I suppose, but I've driven some extraordinary vehicles, something that make your eyes water. But I think one of the nicest things was driving an E-Type Jaguar in the first Goodwood Revival Tourist Trophy. It was a lightweight E-Type Jaguar, and it was unmolested. It was being used on the road. We'd raced it a few times, but to actually win in that car, it was British, 2 British drivers in the car. It was British all round, and that was really fantastic, that lightweight E-Type Jaguar.
James Hunt has problems, but Jerry Marshall fights every foot to a thrilling dead heat with Barrie Williams.
We've all heard of Sterling Moss. What a wonderful guy he is, and he's a great friend of mine. Sterling went out in the Ferguson four-wheel drive at Goodwood, and he did 2 laps in it. He came into the pits. He says, I can't do anything with this car. I can't give it its full credit. I want someone else to drive it. Why don't you give it to Barrie Williams to drive? He'll give it its full thing. And I tell you what, that is an honour, because I had to go to the clerk of the course where he says, Sterling has asked if you can drive the car. I had to start at the back of the grid, and I got up to 3rd place and ran out of brakes, and I'm coming down to this last corner, and there's the pedals on the floor, and it's going bonk, bonk, bonk. And my heart was in my mouth, and it was a bit like walking into the British Museum and seeing a Rembrandt on the floor, on the wall, and punching it, because that's what I thought was going to happen. And anyway, I managed to get it down a few gears and spin it around and keep the engine running, carry it on, and still finish 3rd. But to have Sterling say that, and you know, that was a great honour, I tell you, because to me he is the epitome of the British racing driver. Not only in Formula 1 in the old days, coming back from accidents and still racing at 81. I think the guy is quite extraordinary. But he gave me that honour of driving that car, and I got a 3rd place in it. Well, the first car I owned on the road was, in true fact, was a single-le-mans special. And Dad and I went over to see this guy in Worcester, and he got it, and he'd half rebuilt it. And I don't know what his name was, but we got this single-le-mans. We called it Sin-Tin, because it had an Austin engine, and it was a Singer, so it became a Sin-Tin, for other reasons as well. But anyway, but that little car was the first car I actually owned, I could say I owned, apart from the Morris Minor. I had a minivan, and it had a mattress in the back. Mother didn't know what for, I'm sure. But we had an A40, we had a Bromyard Engineering as it was then, we had an A40 Devon van. Now it was very quick because it was all aluminium. You've got to remember, after the war, aluminium was plentiful because there was a lot left over, very little steel. So before BMC, well, it was BMC, they built cars out of aluminium because they hadn't got any steel. So this A40 van was very quick. I tell you what, Bromyard, Hereford, 3 Counties Club, fantastic, full of birds. You know, what a vehicle that was. Those are good days. You could drive to Worcester and not see another car. I was watching the Rally Wales. I went down to Wales to do a bit of a TV interview down there. And I sat and I watched My Herring. Now, when I was rallying the Mini Cooper, and I was very fortunate to win the Welsh Rally in '64, we did the My Herring special stage, and I sat there in the armchair watching the rally in this armchair, and it was Sebastian Loeb, the world champion, going down this special stage. And by the time he'd started and got to the end, I'd had 32 accidents. You've got Hamilton, who's a racer. You've got Button, who's a racing driver. So whoever is running at the end is usually the quickest one, is the racer who's going the quickest. And that's, I think you'll find Hamilton is probably the quicker driver. He's probably, yeah, by far the quicker driver than Button. Oh yes, definitely. Button is very quick. He's a very good driver. But I think Hamilton is the quicker. Very much the quicker. A racer and a racing driver, a racer is determined to win at all costs, whatever, boom, boom. A racing driver just goes to finish, and they get the car home. The other one is the one, if it doesn't break, he's the winner.
Williams has been off the road, but he's still cheerful despite a teasing Tony Lanfranchi.
I mean, when you have something like this happen, is that a problem for you? A real problem?
It is a bit of a problem. Yes, it is really, yeah. If it wasn't for the lads, problem, we haven't got any money. If it wasn't for the lads that were helping, well, we'd be really stuck, you know. You know, everybody, all the mechanics that come in and help is amazing, it really is.